think many of us may have heard about her story with her son Nathan, who now lives with cerebral palsy. And among her many hats, Christine has become an accomplished author. Her most recent book, Raising Nathan Against All Odds, won an International Impact Book Award for its outstanding discourse on the lived experience of raising a child with disabilities. She has had more than 17 years as a passionate advocate for children with disabilities and for their families. She's the founder of the Nathan Ebanks Foundation and has since 2020 expanded her organization to reach children and families, not only here, but in the wider Caribbean and the United States of America. In fact, it is her intention to be a global service provider. She's here, and I'd like to acknowledge her partner, Mrs. Erin Mercer, who is an accomplished international speech and communication consultant, and you will be directly working with her over the next couple of days. Christine, I think we need to understand a little bit more about what this speech therapy consultancy is about, and we look forward to your sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Ms. Elaine Master, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction and the way you're masterfully leading the conversation today. Mrs. Deborah Manning, on behalf of Executive Director, Mrs. Marilyn McCoy, thank you so much for giving us a little bit more, because I didn't even know that JAID also did a lot of the empowerment and transition into community. So I was very happy to hear that. Mrs. Cordia Chambers-Johnson, who's become my best friend since last year. I just want to acknowledge you and just the amazing heart that you have for the work that you're doing. And as I said to you in person, I'll say it privately, I have been praying that God would raise up another me to replace the me who left Jamaica. And so, I bestow that upon you, and I will lay my hand and anoint you so that you will continue in that capacity. And y'all don't get away all the parent mentors as well. Yes, roping everybody in. And so it is my pleasure to be here this morning in this capacity. Now, I have something to say about the program, but before I do, I kind of need to put on my parent hat and to talk about how absolutely phenomenal this program is. From a personal perspective, 20 years ago when my son, Nathan is 20, when my son was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, we had no idea what that would have meant for his life or for us. I thought my life was over. I thought his life was over. Because everything that was presented to us was presented from the perspective of the dis in their ability. And there was no vision at all about their ability. What cerebral palsy, which is a diagnosis, does is that it affects all areas of development, including speech, language, and communication. So imagine having, or you flip yourself, imagine being a person who is sitting in a space. You can't move unless somebody moves you. You can't eat unless somebody feeds you. If you have an itch, because cerebral palsy is a movement disorder, the area of the brain can't coordinate where on the body the itch is. And so an itch in the back is felt, the center goes all over the body and it becomes a this. And you can't scratch the itch, and then guess what? You have no language to tell anybody what's going on. And then people say, stop your noise, you're too loud, or what, I don't just feed you, what else do you want? And there are other needs that he cannot express. And so giving children the gift of language is the greatest accomplishment they will ever have. I would have given anything to be in a program like this. So when I couldn't find it, and I was told what was not available, and I called a few speech pathologists who were here who tell me they don't work with children like him. When I went through all of that, I had to make a choice, and I'm grateful for my faith, because it was my faith that said that every life matters, and every person that God brings in this earth is here for a reason. Our abilities or disabilities does not determine our worth or our values. And I decided that my role as a parent parent, since nobody could explain to me what that was, I had no parent mentor. I didn't even know anybody with a disability I could talk to. And I had to figure out what that meant. And it was a rough journey, a tough journey, but it was a necessary journey, because it was through that journey and through that research and sitting down, you remember with dial-up internet? Sitting down with dial-up internet trying to search online. But God was gracious in that He dropped me in different circles, and He brought different people to me who helped me to understand that there was more that could be done. I wrote down, every brain can change. That is in effect what they said to me. And that started the birth of the Nathan Ebanks Foundation, which for 17 years I was known as that lady. Because I would, if I see a disability sign, I would drive up and ask, who are you and what do you do? And what was extremely frustrating was a few agencies or organizations that I came across who provide services. When I explained my situation, you know what I said? We can't help you. And I decided, well, I'm going to help myself. And the first workshop we put on as an organization, it was because I identified a special educator who worked with those children, who wanted to come and help, who had the heart and passion to do that. And I couldn't afford to bring her down to teach my son's school, which said to me, if I can't find somebody to teach them how to look after my son, then I have to take him from the school. So all the responsibility came on me and my family. And we had no one to turn to. And when I found that person, I couldn't afford to bring her down. And I thought, just maybe there are other people who have a similar problem. So maybe if I do a workshop and open up where people pay to come, we could collectively find the money to pay for this person to come down. And that was the genesis of the Nathan Ebanks Foundation. And there are people here who understand the impact of that organization. And then I moved to the United States. Or before I moved, we got a lot of requests for speech therapy services, and we couldn't find any person to do that. And in 2016, I was part of a group. I asked a lot of questions, and something that I teach my parents to do. And I was part of a global group living with cerebral palsy in the community. And I observed in the group this chatter where people were talking about, oh, I'm a speech therapist and I just came back from Asia where I went to train some parents, or I just came back from Ivory Coast where I went to train some parents. So I asked, how does one get in on this kind of a program? How do I get somebody here? And it so happened the coordinator of the group was the executive director of a program called MATES, Multi-Agency International Training Fund, that resource speech pathologists and occupational therapists and physical therapists to go to low-resource communities to train parents and teachers, but with a particular emphasis on parents as the ones who are with the children all the time. And through that program, they came here, we did some amazing work in Montego Bay, and I met Erin, and I said to her, you're my new best friend. So you can ask her, Cordia, and she has not been able to release herself from me ever since. And what I love with Erin, and I'm going to ask her to just talk a little bit about speech language pathology and why it's important, because I am not the speech pathologist, I am the agency that coordinates the services and to bring context to whoever it is we're working with. And I work with individuals like Erin personally who help me with my son, but also are able to help me talk through the problems that we're having, and then she put a context around it so I understand what we need to do. So because of her, I look very bright as I'm presenting information out there. And Erin came, and one of the things that blew my mind was she sat on the floor. I was accustomed to the professionals being behind the desk and you sitting in front of them. She was on the floor with the children, and kids were coming out and saying to their parents, is that test? That's not a test, that was play. I remember there was one child who, about 5 years old, with autism on the spectrum, and the parents said in one of the interventions that we did in St. Elizabeth, and the parents said, we can't get him to put on that tablet, so good luck. 30 seconds in the room, the tablet was down. And the child left the room without the tablet. We had to bring the tablet back to the child. And the parent asked, what did you do? And she said, I just made myself the most interesting thing in the room. And I said that is what we need to see in our professional engagement in our community, even as parents, in the way we relate to our children. And so, I love you forever. And she has just been amazing. Over the last 5 years, she has assessed more than 200 children across the island for speech therapy. Many of the children were able to access special education accommodation with the evaluation report, because the Ministry of Education requires that in order for the child to access these accommodations, they have to have a valid speech therapy report, but there are no speech therapists to provide a service. So there are a lot of challenges. A practical example of that, when we moved, so Nathan has cerebral palsy, he's nonverbal, as I said, and when we moved to the United States, like with everybody where you miss where you're from, that showed up for him differently. So whereas we can call our friend and say, boy, I miss you, Elaine, I need to hear your voice. And you're under the mango tree, oh my goodness, that takes me back to Jamaica. A child or individual without communication skills is not able to do that. So it shows up in his body. So he started throwing some tantrums that we've never seen. And he's screaming, and we're living in a country where if the child screams too loud, the police will land at your door because people are thinking that you're doing something to the child. So that was scary for us as well. And there was one particular day he was watching a church program, and one of those Pentecostal church, yes, he got into the spirit with them. So we turned off the TV because his heart was rapidly beating and his eyes were dilated like he was on drugs. And we said, no, this is not a healthy response. And we turned it off, and he had a royal meltdown, thrashing around and screaming. This was not the Nathan we knew, always smiling. And I called up Erin, and I said, this is what is happening. And she talked me through, and then she said, okay, what you gotta do is put him in a safe space, put him in his room. I said, yes, he threw himself off the bed. She said, let him stay on the floor. It's a floor of carpet, it is supported. And I said, yes. She said, fine, let him stay there. And so he stayed on the floor, and he was screaming, and she said, you're going to sit by the door to make sure he's safe, and you're going to say to him in a soft voice, Nathan, I understand that you're upset. When you are settled and you're ready to talk to me, I'm here to talk. And I repeated that several times. And he burned himself out, and then when he was ready, I said, when you're ready, you can come. He rolled over to me. That was his sign to say, I'm ready to talk. And I said to him, okay, I understand we turned off the program, but it is now 9 o'clock, and it is your bedtime, and you have school tomorrow. And because we turned it off early, I will allow you half an hour to go and watch another program. But in half an hour's time, I'm going to turn it off. Is that a deal? And he was there. I said, you have to choose yes or no, and he touched yes. And we took him back outside, and he chose another program. And the clock is right under his TV, and so we showed him, this is the time, at this time you're going to bed. And he was watching and watching the clock, and on the dot of the time, he went, huh? Ready to go inside. And he went to bed, no issue. That happened another time, and we did the same response. We have not had a meltdown since. And it is important because even with children without disabilities, children don't have the language skills of adults. We don't understand how to process a lot what we're going through, and so it happens in our bodies. And so working with the parents really teach them not just for the child with special needs, but how to relate to others, even adults sometimes in our family. And so what we have been doing is hybriding a model of support, because speech-language pathologists are gold to find, and it's a very competitive field. Globally, there are not enough people. Kathleen, who is one of our speech pathologists, says that where she lives in Colorado, that they have a 20% gap of speech therapists that they can't find. And so countries like Jamaica is going to be very hard for us to attract. And so the innovation part comes in, because you're now working with a team of other people who combine. One person couldn't do it, but the combined hours can do that. And then we can see people outside of other appointments and outside of different things. So we started with the 25 children, and we screened them, or they screened them, to see which child can work virtually and which child can't. And then they went into the parent interview, and then they did the evaluation for those who can do that virtually. And The others who can't, we're seeing them face to face. We started yesterday and we see them through until Saturday. And also for some of them who are seen virtually, we're trying to fit in at least one treatment session, because the component is the screening, the evaluation, 4 treatment sessions, and then the output would be the reports, the parent training and coaching, and the teacher training. And that last component I mentioned will take place in August, when we will be back again to do the training. And people may ask, but yes, speech therapy, it's not a quick fix, it's something that stays with you for a while. And it is, but it is better to give you something than nothing at all. But what I've found as well, parents are just remarkable in being the ones who not just support their children at home, but who become advocates for their children in helping others understand how they communicate and how to relate to them. I know I've done that, and I know a lot of parents who are doing that. And so the innovative part also is working with the parents as the holders of the children's support, and so they're able to carry that support through to the rest of the organization. And so that is it in a nutshell in terms of what we have been doing. But I just want to emphasize before I go that this initiative provides immediate support to the participating students. It sets a precedent for future projects, and I was very delighted to hear about the feasibility study and about the write-up after, because it now becomes evidence in the archives that can now guide the development of future projects like this for other organizations, so that we can support our children, because after all, in addition to the human rights, as a country, our people are our human capital. And so investing in their development also not just helps the children and families, but it helps our country. So these are my few words in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Christine, and thank you, Erin Mercer, and welcome again to Jamaica. I know you've been here before.